At 9:50 a.m., we had no parking. This is crazy. Like, this started with 44 buy one, get one free tables. There's over 400 tables out there. And then to see all the people at preview night, that was really special.
All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Episode 3 here for Cards and Content. Shout out to everybody for joining us for this episode. Shout out to everybody who's either new or who has listened to an episode so far. It's crazy. We're already 3 episodes in here. Excited to continue this journey. We've put a lot of effort and conversation behind the scenes here about ways to improve. So shout out to everybody for the feedback and the comments so far. Hopefully we can continue to develop this into the perfect mesh for both talking before guests and after. You know, somebody had pointed out like a little long in the intro before the guest. I just want to be open about that, looking to hopefully talk about different things in the industry, our experiences, things we're preparing for, show what's really going on behind the scenes here, and then hopefully have guests. Not every episode may have one. We do have some lined up here early. We've had some amazing guests so far, and today's episode will be no different. But want to continue to hopefully develop this and find out what is that right mix. First thing I've got to, mention is, this past weekend was the Combine. I talked about it with Gabe on the podcast last week. I mentioned it both when I was by myself talking and when he was on the pod. What about Will Howard? Shout out to every person that mentioned that Will Howard did not have the best NFL draft combine over the weekend. Missed some throws, just looked a little shaky. Shout out to everybody in my mentions for pointing that out. Hopefully Will Howard can rebound. I still hope he's a day 2 guy. Hopefully a nice Ohio State pro day is coming before too long. Throwing to my guy Jeremiah Smith, Emeka, guys like that. But always looking through the comments now as we're searching for feedback, and people love to mention the Will Howard thing. So man, I hope he's got a rebound here. But a lot to get into today. Again, the guest is our guy, Brad B. Sports. Now, we actually filmed this a little bit earlier. We film these in advance because just with the way our schedule works with content here, we want to get these out Monday at noon. So we try to get these, done ideally on Friday to have them out first thing Monday. Maybe just a few things to tweak Monday before the episode. And Brad was actually in town right after Shipshewana, what is this, last week? I'm trying to think when this episode will drop. It'll basically be last weekend. He came in the next day, and we actually sat down and did a podcast in person. So the interview is a little bit, we've already recorded that, but it's a long interview. It's a great interview. It's one I was really excited for, but the interview is long. So going to try to keep this as short and sweet as possible, but there's so many cool things to talk about. First and foremost, the one thing, I know we're going to start the podcast with that, the one thing on my mind today is the Paul Skeens. The Paul Skeens debut patch auto PSA 1010 is live on Fanatics Collect. My guy Brian's actually got it pulled up here. We were doing some, research on this card before the episode started. I think it was at like 340 an hour ago when we were looking, and it's at $360,000 as of now when we're recording this episode. It has 52 bids. It ends in basically 2 weeks. This card is crazy, and I wanted to kind of talk about this particular card in this, this debut patch auto. Brian and I were having a little conversation before the episode started, and I don't know if this has been like widely talked about, but I'm also not in baseball, so I'm not going to say that it hasn't. But I want to get, some feedback from you guys on what you think about this. The Bowman Chrome Draft Superfractor Paul Skeens. A couple things about this card. It's actually sold twice. Brian's got the top sales of Paul Skeens cards up. There's 2 sales on here for the top Paul Skeens sale. The first time this card sold was in June of last year, June of 2024. Paul Skeens Bowman Chrome Draft Superfractor. It's a PSA 7 with a 10 auto, it looks like. Sold for $80,500 on Golden in June of last year. Then it got flipped later in the season, late September sold again on Golden for $123,000. So first off, shout out to the person that made 50 G's flipping a Paul Skeens card in 4 months. Incredible work there. But with the Paul Skeens debut patch auto already at $360,000 with 2 weeks left, I mean, that's already 3 times the price of the biggest Paul Skeens card ever to sell. It really brings up the question of, is the debut patch auto the most desirable card for an athlete that can be made? Right now, it's only baseball. Topps is going to get the football and the basketball license at some point, and you would expect that this trend of the debut patch auto would continue in those sports. We've seen it in soccer, right? You've seen the soccer debut patch autos. So the question becomes is when you get a football and a basketball player in there, right? Arch Manning, I don't know when the schedule, I don't know the exact dates of when the schedule lines up. Let's say Arch Manning's in there. Even if it's not Arch Manning, Jeremiah Smith is likely in that timeline. As a Buckeye, selfishly, I think about that. And you just start thinking about this conversation around, one, is this a bigger chase? Well, clearly it is a bigger chase in the Bowman Chrome Superfractor, right? The first Superfractor auto has been the desired card in baseball for a long time. Clearly, it is the debut patch auto right now. It has overtaken that. The Paul Skeens, again, is already 3x that and is still going to likely go up before it ends. But then you wonder, okay, this goes to basketball, football. You get the Arch Manning, Jeremiah Smith, whoever it is, a future major name prospect. And then it bears the question, is that the most desirable trading card that could possibly be made of any athlete? Right? Any Paul Skeens, let's look at all Paul Skeens, whether he becomes the best pitcher ever or, an amazing pitcher from this time, I'm trying to think of guys from recently, like Clayton Kershaw, whether he is or is not, whether he becomes the best ever or not, you would still likely argue that is going to be, no matter what, the single greatest Paul Skeens card ever made. And then you break that down even more with, will that become the greatest trading card ever made for any athlete that Topps does that for? Football, basketball, baseball, soccer, I know are ones that they'll have years from now. Obviously, baseball and soccer, being now with MLS. But it's an interesting debate where it's like, what could possibly trump that card? Again, the Superfractor has always been so desirable. In basketball, or in football now, it's, Prism, it's NT, it's those things. But a lot of those, the Prisms aren't patch autos. The National Treasures aren't game worn. You've got Flawless. Flawless is often game worn in basketball. Has been for a while. But is there anything that can trump that debut patch auto down the line? It's going to be interesting. I mean, these cards are on pace for record sales. Brian, can you pull up some of the debut patch autos that have sold in the past? I want to see what some of these other ones have sold for. So debut patch auto, Mason Wynn. PSA 10, 75,000. Caminero as a PSA 9, 66,000. Colton Cowser, looks like it's at a PSA 8, it looks like 49,000. A lot of these on Fanatics Premier or Golden. You've got that's McDavid, that's hockey, that's a different, that's not quite it. But again, a lot of major sales for some of these guys. I think it's going to be an interesting, really fascinating thing to follow with when they get the football and basketball license and can create those cards, what some of these cards are going to do in other sports for other athletes, because early signs would indicate these will become the most desired trading cards ever of an athlete. And I would be curious. I'm very open to feedback on this. I would love to know if somebody differs from that. What could be more desired than that, a debut patch auto of any athlete? Because you're also seeing it too, and I think Topps has done a really good job of promoting this, where some of these athletes are chasing these cards. Their family members are chasing these cards. I know our friends at Neighborhood Card Shop, Garrett and Anthony, I think they got one. It was either an actual card, it was a redemption, I forget what it was, but I think they sold it to like a brother. Brian's trying to pull up the story now, but there's the dad one, Brian, if you scroll up, there's a dad one right there. I don't think that's it on the left. but like they had like a family member reach out, they got it to them. You're seeing these athletes, this top story Brian shared is, it says his dad surprised him with his own debut patch. These athletes are collecting these cards, investors, people. I'm sure Paul Skeens is not the only person going after this Paul Skeens card. There's probably somebody in the sports card, market, an investor, a collector, somebody that's going to be after that card. These cards are going to be desired by a multitude of people. And I think, it's a lightning in a bottle here. And obviously this is the biggest one that will have sold to this point. But man, it brings up an interesting question on, how desired these will end up being. It seems like it's definitely going to be something that's really cool. And shout out to Topps for that kind of innovation, that ability. Again, when you can create it across multiple sports, I can tell you if Jeremiah Smith has a debut patch auto in a couple years, I will have serious interest in that card. Very, very serious. We kind of talked about it internally here. I hope one day that national championship jersey, becomes available for sale. As an Ohio State fan who's seen one in a decade now, 2 in a decade, I would love to own that. So I think of, if I get a debut patch auto of a guy like that, could be a legend at Ohio State. What a cool card. And then you start playing this out. It's a really cool thing. So we'll be very intrigued to see where that sells for. Curious if you guys have any opinions on where you think the final number might be. Obviously, today's Friday. This episode comes out on Monday. You've got 4 days for this card to get more bids between now and then. So going to be intrigued to see where it ends up. But officially 2 weeks from today, by the time this episode goes live, we're going to be under 10 days. So gonna be intrigued. But that is definitely what's on my mind today. The other thing is by the time this goes live, what day is that going to be, Brian? Is it going to be 11th when this episode goes live? Basically, it'll be, 2 weeks? 10th? So 2.5 weeks until baseball starts. I'm a lot more of a football collector. If you guys watch the content or listen, you definitely know it's football heavy for us. So, I don't know the baseball timelines as well, but one of the things you start thinking about is, when is going to be the time to sell baseball? I think if you follow the football timeline, many collectors, people that have been in it for a while, if you're buying like QBs or the stuff to flip, oftentimes the National is really a great spot for some of that stuff, right? You buy guys in the offseason. This is normally how it's worked. In 20 years, I've seen a lot of this where it's, you buy guys now, then post-draft in the summer, more that June, May, June, July timeline. Again, post-NFL draft usually. And then the National comes around and everybody is a believer. Everybody's a believer that their team, their player, their guy is the next big thing. And there's a lot of demand at those shows for quarterbacks. Like we've set up before at the National, and there's no doubt football is a hot commodity there. So now that we're 2 weeks away from baseball, what really is that timeline to sell stuff? Obviously, if you sell things now, you're going to miss out on somebody being called up. Somebody's going to have an MVP type season. Someone's going to come out of nowhere. A team's going to start hot. Those things exist. But I'm curious from the listeners here is, are we approaching that timeline to start moving some of this baseball? Like there's a lot of guys now, especially prospect wise, that are moving up and are, hey, this guy might make the opening day roster. Stuff is moving in the right direction. Not everybody can win a World Series. Not everybody can win an MVP. Not everybody can win a Cy Young. When is the right time to move those? I'm curious. This is probably something I might ask on, Instagram. If you guys haven't followed us already, Cards and Content on Instagram, trying to post on there. But we're going to start soliciting questions for like Q&A episodes and asking polls for some of these questions. And I think I would ask you is, are you the type of, if you buy cards to flip, you buy prospects, if that's your thing, whether that's football, basketball, baseball, are you the type of person that says, hey, I'm going to ride it to see if this person is something? I'd rather buy it like a Jason Dominguez, like a guy like that. I'd rather buy it and hold it and miss than sell it early and him be the best thing ever. Or are you, I'll sell everybody, miss on a couple, be right on a couple, and oh, well, I got out of them beforehand. I'm very curious about that. We've been talking here about when the time is to move baseball. So I'm curious if you guys would drop a comment on IG on, I think you can comment on Spotify as well. I would always be curious about that kind of stuff because we are getting close. We're 2.5 weeks away from the start of the baseball season. So Now is the time to think about it if you're that type of person that says, hey, I want to, move this stuff before the season, before I miss out on somebody. Now, I want to try to get through this. I want to try to mention this next segment here relatively quickly. Again, we're going to run out of time. This episode's going to be longer than anticipated. But we picked up some cool stuff this week, some really cool odds and end type thing. And obviously, this is cards and content. So want to talk more about the card I picked up. But what I would also like to do is, we haven't got into we did Card Talk had Play of the Week where we talked about, different plays people were making, and we may develop some kind of segment like that down the road. But for the sake of something a little different, always like sharing the content about the things we pick up. So I'm very curious if you've picked up anything cool. I'm going to do a little pickup of the week here. I'm going to show you guys what my favorite pickup of the week was. But if you have a favorite pickup, shoot us a DM on IG. Let me know your favorite pickup, maybe some backstory behind it. I'm going to share one of those next week on the episode. I'll mention the IG page, but shoot us on there. We'll tag you. But I would love to see what others are picking up and why they're picking it up. For me, it's got to be this. I talk about this on the IG a lot, and if you're listening, not watching, it's a Randall 2024 Topps Chrome Disney Super. I've picked up. It's funny, I've actually got 3, I think there's 4 total, 3 of the Monsters, Inc. Disney Supers from 2024 Topps Chrome. My son was Sully for his first ever Halloween costume. So when I saw the Sully, I obviously had to buy it. I like collecting the story behind it and why you collect it. So for me, when my son was Sully, I was like, they have a Sully Super, I got to buy this and got to own this in the PC. And then, Boo is another character in Monsters, Inc. Randall's another character in Monsters, Inc. I like collecting the Disney cards. I talk about that on my, on the IG page. My wife used to work at Disney, did the college program back in the day. We've been to Disney a couple times. We've taken our son. Again, the story about why, you collect, it's fun to collect it with my wife. My son, we've been there. Like, Disney holds a special place, and it's a big piece of my wife and I's relationship. So to be able to collect those type of cards now, it's something I've really, really enjoyed. And I've talked about in previous episodes and on my IG page that, F1 was a big part of it. I still have 99.99% of all my F1 stuff. We got to go to a race together. We watched a documentary together. We watched races together with our son. So to be able to collect that F1 thing, there's just not a lot over the years that my wife has enjoyed collecting with me as much as the F1 and the Disney stuff. So to be able to pick up those things and share them and then tie them back to memories in our life has been a lot of fun. So no question would be a 24 Chrome Disney Super. Hopefully continue to pick up some more Disney stuff here soon. But I did pick up another Disney piece, and this has taken me into the last topic here, probably before we get into the interview with Brad, B Sports, is I've been picking up a lot of things lately, not necessarily intentionally to acquire them all at once, but it brings up the topic around what else do you collect outside of cards. I think one thing I focused on over the last 12 to 18 months is picking up things, one, that bring me a ton of joy and are very different. So not the things that, every necessarily card collector has, in their collection. The diversification piece has been something really cool for me. You see other people collect tickets and magazines and posters and newspapers and all sorts of different things. And I've collected a lot of papers over the years around, like, when Ohio State wins national titles. I have them framed. I love to display those in my office. Again, I think newspapers will eventually go away, so it's cool to have that kind of stuff. Tickets went away, so some of the early tickets I have, that kind of stuff's been fun to collect. But just different things over the years. The Disney piece brings up, I was able to acquire a really cool Walt Disney piece lately that was like a newspaper article announcing Disney is coming to television. Walt signed it. It's authenticated. Not a guy you see a lot of signatures of these days. He's been dead for a while. So a piece like that, obviously Disney means a lot to me. Super cool. But even other things, like, here's one of them, and this will actually be a giveaway. We'll announce this. We'll talk about this later in the episode. But Lorcana Disney pack. So the first ever Disney Lorcana run they did. I graded an entire box worth of packs. I think there's 3 or 4 different characters in there. This is a 9. We'll give one of those away here. We'll give that away actually soon, and I'll talk about it on the podcast. But again, obviously Disney is a piece of my collection, and I mentioned earlier why I collect it. But if it ends up being something, awesome. If not, it's not very expensive to do. They display well. It's something cool. Those are PSA graded. It's, again, not very expensive. It's something we give them out to friends or, kids that collect, but just a cool, like, one-off piece. And then something like this. I've never got super big into the video game market. It's, would love to have some of the games from when I was a kid, but this is something more recently graded. So this is the return of NCAA football. I have a CGC PS5 copy here. It's got Hunter, Donovan Edwards, Quinn Ewers on the front. That's a 9.8 grade. I've come to realize in the video game market that's a pretty good grade. We actually got a 9.9 on one of these copies. But again, return of NCAA football, first time in 11 years, really the start of that NIL era in college football. Do I think this is a long-term investment play? No, it's not something I bought to invest in. But CGC doesn't charge a lot to grade these. They display on desks. We've given them to friends. It's just more of a talking piece than it is anything. But I've enjoyed picking up stuff like this. So again, a fun one to display on the desk. And then something a little more different. I actually thought about this when I was at the game. I'm so glad I did it. Obviously, growing up in Columbus, Ohio State football is as big as anything for me in the collecting and sports world. And I was singing from the mountaintops that Jeremiah Smith was going to be an amazing college football player in December of whatever that was, 23. When he signed on signing day, this dude's going to be incredible. He's obviously a top recruit, so shouldn't surprise anyone. But just some conversations I had to hear locally, he was going to be amazing. So I went to opening day, and they had a limited edition, limited being 5,000 copies, limited edition game day magazine. Ohio State started numbering their programs. I think they're all out of 5,000 except for very one-off copies. I think the Notre Dame copy in the past was 2,500 copies. Don't quote me on that. I would have to confirm. But most of them are 5,000 copies. So it's got Archie Griffin on it, two-time Heisman Trophy winner, 50-year anniversary. But this is the debut college football program for Jeremiah Smith's first ever college game. Tickets don't exist. You can't buy tickets to Ohio State game. Physical. I've asked. It can't find them anywhere. So really the only paper documents is I have a field pass from that day when we went on the field. So I have that, but I also now have a program. I think we bought 14 or 16 of them, graded every single copy. I have a 9.8 that displays in my office. We tried to put it up on the backdrop here, but it's too big and too heavy. But again, this doesn't cost a lot to grade. There's not a lot of stuff from that debut. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith is, somebody I expect to be an Ohio State great. He doesn't have tickets from his debut. There's not really a lot that say Jeremiah Smith's first ever college football game, except for this. So, again, could it be worth more than what I paid for it and what I graded it at in the future? Sure. Did I buy it for that? No. But again, just some of those one-off things lately that I've been picking up. Got a couple Buckeye game used NFL jerseys. Jeremy Ruckert, Malik Harrison picked up the college football game, the Lorcana pack. Just had me, thinking what else there is to collect outside of the traditional, trading card game. We've talked a lot on this, and we will. This is a cards and content podcast around trading cards and other, that trading card space. But outside of some of those other things, a lot of them are, again, to collect. Remember, at the end of the day, this is a hobby and it's supposed to bring joy. So while there's things like the Paul Skeens, we talked about the Bowman Chrome Superfractor being flipped for $50,000, and that is exciting, and somebody is very excited about that. And hopefully, Paul Skeens is one of the best baseball players, ever. But at the end of the day, there's a reason why we collect these things, the memories, the stories behind them. A lot of that goes into it, especially for me. I am a collector at the end of the day. It just happens to be my business. But some of those pieces are, around the office. I'm like, I remember who I went to that game with, where I was, and what Jeremiah Smith can become. He's a national champion at Ohio State. He's one of the best college football players in the country after 1 year. He's NFL ready now. This guy's going to be electric one day. He's going to be awesome. I was there when he played his first college football game. I've got a program. I've got it graded. It displays in my desk. It's really cool. And the college football game and what NIL means to college football, what it means to cards, right? We talked about that with Gabe last week around how NIL is changing the sports card world. It's a big part of our business now. We are big into Bowman Chrome, those college products. So again, a bigger conversation for another day, but just thought it was cool, and I'm curious what else others collect outside of some of these traditional sports and trading card items. So again, a lot more we can talk about. We do have another giveaway. I mentioned we'll give away the Lorcana pack here, but last week's giveaway was drop a comment on the YouTube page. Let us know a guest you want to see on here. Brian picked a random comment. I think it's incredibly fitting as well. We'll announce it on YouTube on the community tab, and we'll respond to the comment. As always, keep an eye out for the spam on there. But I think is it Kobe Rules? I thought it was Coben. There's definitely, Kobe Rules 1983. The comment was, I think you should have Donnie Nicky on. That would be a cool interview. Definitely would be a cool interview. Donnie's not as big into the card game, but considering that's really my first personal collection guy, just the story with collecting him for 20 plus years, being a Buckeye national champion from 2002, would be incredible. It was at my opening day in our card shop in May of 21 when we opened that. So talk about a full circle moment. That would definitely be a cool one to have on there. So we do have a couple cool other guests coming on here. Donnie is not scheduled, and I've never asked him to be on, but that would be awesome one day. But we definitely have some cool guests coming up. So excited to share more about that soon. Should have some more announcements from our team here soon around trade nights. If you guys have never been, well, you should definitely come to one of our trade nights. We've got an announcement on one of those very, very soon. And then by the time this episode goes live, we will be live later tonight on Whatnot, one of our bigger sales. I'm live on there a couple times a month. Tonight is going to be one of those nights. If you guys have not checked out one of our sales on there, especially the ones where I'm live, they're pretty crazy. We have usually an insane amount of giveaways, Zion cases, cards, product, etc. Bunch of cool stuff, bunch of auctions. That will be tonight. If you guys are on YouTube, we got the link in our bio. You can get $15 off your first purchase. But I will be live on there later. So we have a lot of bigger announcements coming up here soon. Excited to share those. Won't get too much more into them. We're already really, really, really long on this episode. That was the giveaway for the Zion case. Going to give away one of these Lorcana packs. Again, I have a couple of these, so I want to give one of these away. If you're not interested, no big deal. Would love this to go to somebody who would appreciate it. But this is a copy. This is a foil pack of Maleficent from the first chapter of Lorcana. So basically the first ever Lorcana product. It's a PSA 9 copy. I think these do about $60. All you got to do is same thing on YouTube. Brian, what did we say the giveaway was going to be for this one? Did we pick a topic? No, we didn't. What did we do last time? Podcast guest? What's one segment you would like to see us add to the show? What's one segment you'd like to see add? You want to see we're going to do the pickup of the week. We do the one thing on the mind. What would be a segment you would like to see? Whether that's just a Q&A once a month, whether that's a live stream on TikTok, YouTube, IG, whether that's coolest card picked up in shop, favorite card show, whatever it is. Let me know a segment you want to see added. That's got to be a comment on YouTube. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify. Shout out to those of you listening there. You guys check us out on there. Any reviews on there, any 5-star reviews definitely help. You can subscribe on there on YouTube. You can like, comment, subscribe. Those things help tremendously. And we've seen a lot of support from y'all so far on those. So just know I greatly, greatly appreciate that. But this will be a YouTube comment giveaway. As always, keep an eye out for the spam, that people's trying to steal your money or your information. We don't ask for that. But we'll give that away on next week's episode. All right. A fun interview right now. This is a little bit of a longer one, but it gets into what Shipshewana was, how it came to be, and the person behind it. So excited for you guys to check out the interview with my guy, B Sports. We're going to that right now. All right, guys, we are back. Our third interview here on the podcast is a special one. Today, we are going to talk to a great friend, my guy, Brad Beeman, the original founder for the Shipshewana Card Fest, one of my favorite card shows in the entire country. Today, we're going to talk to Brad about the origin story with Shipshewana, how it got started, how we met, and how our relationship developed into what it's become today, where we now work together on the Shipshewana Card Show and other card shows, other events for our company here. at Card Collector 2. So this is one I've been looking forward to for quite some time. Wasn't sure when Brad was going to be on the pod, but figure he's actually in town visiting here in Columbus. We're looking at some different shows. We can get more into that later. Hopefully we'll be able to run one of those soon. But Brad's actually in town right after the Shipshewana Card Fest and figured what better time to talk about Shipshewana with Brad and have him on the pod than right after the show itself. So Brad, welcome to the pod.
No, thank you so much. It's a surreal day, man. Like what a last couple of days we went through, and just still trying to process it all. I mean, we really leveled up, had a blast running it for the first time with you. I told my wife, I felt so supported. It was usually myself, my wife, my daughter Gabby, Carson when he would decide to present himself at the show.
The MVP Carson.
Yeah, so no one sold pop and water better than him at the old place. So it was just awesome, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot of it, but just happened to be in town today, which as CC2's only remote employee, I believe.
Yes.
It was just good luck to get here, and super happy to be here and talk about it.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. I think this is one thing I've already enjoyed so much about this podcast is just being able to talk to people that I really, really enjoy talking with and people that I talk with regularly, honestly. You know, Brett and Gabe are guys that I, talk with pretty consistently, and Brad and I talk pretty regularly and have for a long time. Mm-hmm. We actually met through Instagram many, many years ago back when I started. I got an IG in 2013. I think you were on pretty close to the same time. And used to run breaks on there, a couple boxes, pick your team, all through IG Live. And, Brad got the Colts in. Can't imagine there was too many breaks. Brad didn't buy the Colts in. But Brad, I want to start a little bit with that with that on here is, how did you get into IG? How did you get into cards? Sure. Ultimately you ended up creating, Shipshewana and what it is today, but how did it start for you?
Yeah, so my introduction to cards was actually breaks on YouTube. I would work from home and turn them on as entertainment, and got the bug. Probably did a few too many breaks when I first got into the hobby, and then from there I really started getting on eBay. And I would, after my wife and kids would go to bed, I would just scroll through eBay and just trying to really understand this card market. Because when I was a kid, I was collecting, Topps, Don Russ, Fleer, and I didn't even know what Panini was. To me, that was a sandwich. It wasn't even a card brand. I had to figure out, is that the generic version? Is that the good stuff? So there was just this big research, and one of the things that really helped me learn cards was I started going to the monthly card show in Fort Wayne and developed a lot of friends, started setting up there. Through that, I was like, wow, it would be really cool if I put my cards online just so I had pictures of them. Yeah. So in case I didn't bring them to the show, it was like an inventory to show someone. I had no clue there was a card community. Absolutely no idea. I think the first person I followed that I was like, oh, there's guys out here that really have followings with their pictures of their cards was a guy named Jimmy Mahan.
Yep.
Kentucky basketball cards, legend in the hobby.
A+ human being.
And so I started following him and really was just in awe, as everyone is, of his collection. And he used to be on a lot more. I think he keeps pretty busy with the shop and other things in his life. So kind of followed through them. And if you follow Jimmy, you're probably going to run into Ryan Johnson, card collector, too. And started following you. And honestly, our friendship started because you were so easy to do deals with, and you were always wanting to make deals. So if we had those cards from breaks that weren't Indianapolis Colts players, I knew, hey, I figure out, send a message to Ryan, he'll probably buy them. And I'm someone that's cut to the chase. Yeah. And so once I figured out your percentage, it was I'll just call Ryan. I know exactly, or hit him up on a DM, and I'll just let him know I got some cards for sale, and we'll get it done. No fuss. And so that's how we became friends, just making deals on there. And it's been really cool. It's obviously developed into a great friendship and now a partnership and something really cool.
Yeah. That is definitely one thing I would say about you for sure is you're just straight to the point. It was, hey, I've got this lot. This is what it looks like. It was always super detailed. There was usually videos flipping through it. It was there's this many cards. This is what it's worth. This is what I want for it. And it was one of those things just early on, especially sometimes you get on deals online and it can be a little bit more back and forth, and you got to look up comps and you got to argue about comps a little bit. And it was just always so easy. And then obviously running breaks on there, and Brad loved the Colts, man. The 2018 days chasing, Quentin Nelson. But even like at that time, that was like right before Luck had retired. So the Andrew Luck days, that's when the Colts were really good. And, I just remember you collecting Luck and us meeting at the National and talking there. And I think that's what's so cool is, we were driving home from Shipshewana, and I was talking to, Brian was in the car, my wife, Kinsey was there, and we were just talking about, how you and I met. And I was pulling back up some old pictures, and it's like you, me, and Carson at I think it was the first trade night I ran when Jimmy wasn't able to be there.
Yep.
It was in Cleveland in 2018. It's like you, me, and Carson. And, I was telling them, I was like, we've known each other for a long time. Like, we've been good friends for a decade now. Like, it started through cards and through a couple deals, but I think that's one of the things I've always been amazed by in cards is, some of the best friends I have, some of the best people I know in life, I've met through cards, and they've turned into great relationships. Like, you and I is the perfect example of that. And it's crazy to look back. I think Carson was in like 5th grade at the time. He's a senior in high school now. It's so crazy. So I think this is going to be super, super fun. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Brad and we've obviously talked cards, and we've done I've been to a lot of the shows in the early Shipshewana days, but to be able to talk on, this stage now and all these years later is something I've been looking forward to for a while. So, speaking of a lot of the Shipshewana card shows, it started in a venue much, much smaller than the one we were in, recently. Tell me, how did, I know a lot of the story, but I would love for, the audience to know, how did this idea come about to start a card show in Shipshewana, Indiana, of all places? I always say it's in every video I talk about in Shipshewana. I'm not lying. It is in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
How did a card show start in Shipshewana, Indiana? And walk me through some of the early days.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to backtrack really quickly. First trade night ever, Jimmy Mahan, right?
Yep.
Was it New Atlantic City?
Atlantic City.
Second trade night, Chicago.
Yep.
You and Jimmy, or just Jimmy again?
Yep.
Third trade night was yours.
Cleveland, 2018.
Fourth trade night, I don't know if you remember this, it was Chicago.
Yeah, back in Chicago. It was the 10,000 square foot ballroom at the Hyatt Regency O'Hare.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
You didn't have a PA system. So I lugged a speaker and microphone.
And Jimmy and I stood on chairs on the right side of that room.
It was really a karaoke machine.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't even like, and we were like, we're just going to do it.
Wing it.
It was an awesome time. And so I always remember lugging the karaoke machine across the lobby of the Hyatt Regency. But as for the show, I just, right when I got in the hobby in 2014, fell in love with shows, started setting up. And what you find, and I think what still runs through the show today, it's the community. Mm-hmm. You become family with like people you set up around with, people that go to these shows, and the dealers, they end up becoming your dealers. It's literally a family. And sometimes things happen in families that, it's not always, sometimes it can get, people can get angry, sometimes they're happy, but you end up going to weddings, and it's just, Shipshewana is based on family. And so how it started was I went to a card show in Elkhart, Indiana. A guy named Fred put it on, and Fred owned a card shop, and next to him was an empty like Dollar General. Yep. And so he rented it. Well, because it was empty and vacant, no AC, no bathrooms, because they were like, why would we run the AC? The building's vacant. And so when you went in there was like 40 tables jammed in there, just sweat through your shirt, July. And we were all having a ball. It's when you could buy a John Morant card at one show and the next week make $100 flipping it at the next one. It was the height of COVID. It was the height of the boom. And so we were really just having a really good time. But I left, I'm just like sweating, and I had to stop at a gas station to use the restroom because like for 4 hours there was no restroom available. And I just thought, that room was packed. And probably like any guy in life, you're like, I think I could do that. And that's no offense to Fred. He's an awesome human still in the hobby today. He doesn't run the show anymore. And I thought, I think I could do it. And so I actually went online, and there's some Indiana card communities. And I said, if I did a show, would anyone come to it? And like 20 guys were like, absolutely, you should do it. Now there's a surprise baked in that I'll get to. But so I'm blessed to have a father-in-law who owns a hotel. And I went to him and I said, if I had a card show in 5 or 6 weeks, would you give me a good rate on the room? Because if you know my father-in-law, he does very well for himself. And he's really my dad at this point. He's a huge influence in my life. And he was like, yeah, the first one. I mean, because that's just him. Like, it's business. And so he gave me a really good rate. Got the tables, got the chairs. I did buy one, get one free. Because my thought was if I could sell 30, 40 tables, everyone would take a free one, and then I could market it as a 60, 70, 80 table. And more people might come because they'd be like, oh, this is a pretty big deal, not knowing I gave away half the tables. It was really one of the smartest things I ever did because it did draw a crowd. So we decided to have the show. I mean, this sounds like marketing, like terrible marketing. Labor Day. Labor Day. My first show was on a Monday. But I had the advantage of right across the street was the Midwest's largest flea market. And I thought if all the ladies go to the flea market, maybe they'll let their husbands come over across the road. The magic in it all was that I didn't really realize the state of Michigan was locked down on COVID and couldn't have card shows. So it was just like all these Michigan collectors on Labor Day of 2020 poured into the show. We had like 600 people come, and I thought I was at the height of card show promoting. Like, it was the best day. And the hilarious part of it is, and the people that are woven into this story all the way through are Stacy and Gabby. They ran the show for me. I got an intestinal infection.
I remember this.
I got the table set up, got them labeled with the famous, if you've ever been to Shipshewana, blue tape.
The blue tape.
Yep. Wrote everyone's name on it, and I was like,
you were dying.
I was like, it was probably the sickest I've ever been in my life. 2 days after the show, I had to go to the hospital and get an IV. I was so sick. And so Gabby ran the show. Stacy had to work a half day, so she came up, but Gabby ran the show. And so all the guys were like, we thought your first show that an 18 or a 14, 15-year-old girl ran the show. We were like, what did we sign up for? But they all loved it. They all were like, man, all these Michigan people came down, bought a ton of cards. So it was a great, great day. And that's how it started. Was I thought I could do it better. My father-in-law cut me a deal on a hotel room, and my daughter ran the first one. So here we are. Crazy
to think, after if you told somebody all of those stories about that, it turned into what it turned into. It's kind of crazy. But knowing what it turned into now, mm-hmm. and knowing where it was there, what do you think were like 2, 3 different things that you look back on and be like, these things helped it go from that hotel room with Gabby running it during the height of COVID? How did it go from there to there? Like, what are those things that you look back on and be like, this is why it worked out the way it did?
Yeah, I mean, I think the seeds to having the show that end up the way it did was, and this is just such a simple thing, but a lot of my dealers said, I took a chance on you because you had an awesome flyer. Whereas other people might type something up on Microsoft Word back then, or they might use clip art. I literally hired I didn't have any budget for the show, but I paid like $150 for a flyer. And literally dealers took a chance on it because they're like, if he cared that much, to have a nice flyer, I'll take a chance on it. And the other thing I did, obviously with the permission of other promoters, is I would go to shows and my favorite dealers, guys like Andy Paulo, Brad Hollister, guys that still set, these guys.
Yeah.
They still set up today. I went and recruited them. I'm like, okay, if I were building a show, what would I want? Okay, I need a good dollar box guy. I'll get Eddie Thomas and Brad Hollister and Tom Nielsen. I need a good $50 to $250 auto guy. Andy Paulo is the best around for that. Well, I'll tell him to try to invite his friend Mikey, who might have some nice Michael Jordans he'll bring. So in case, someone with money stopped by, we could have something for him. So I really just, like the first 40, 60 tables, I just built it with one, what inventory they had, but two, were they good humans? Like, are these people that I want to have a good show from? And I wasn't even thinking this far out, but I think why we developed such an awesome core is because good people know good people. Mm-hmm. And so they said, hey, the show was rocking. 600 people came the first time. So the second show, a whole nother set of awesome people came. Josh Freed. And I got to stop naming people because you always hate to miss someone that means a ton to you. But so that was the second thing, is I would recruit your core, because your core is going to become the heart of the show, and if you're going to be family or not. And that's how you find people like Courtney Reck and other people that mean so much to the show now. So those are a couple of things, like spend a little money on marketing. Like everyone loves to do it cheap, but put a little money into it. I'm not saying stress your family out, but and then the third thing would be that I have learned, and that we're learning a lot and looking at some expansion. You got to just price these shows out and price out venues. Everyone thinks, well, if I rent the building for this much, I'm home free. Is there enough parking? Do tables and chairs come with the building? If you can get tables and chairs in the rent of the overall building, you're flying, because tables and chairs can cost a terrible amount to rent, set up. So yeah, and obviously, I guess if you can find a place you can expand in, because we've had to move buildings 3 times, and that's a blessing. But it's super nice that in our new building, I think we're going to be there a bit, because there's a lot of room to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a lot more room in this one. I mean, we packed the barn quite a few times.
Sure.
If you've been to the Shipshewana, card show in the past, some of those big time Shipshewana shows, like Memorial Day weekend a few times, you couldn't move. Brian's in the back nodding. Yes. Like, obviously we film. Brian he's been at every, show I've ever filmed at, basically. And you try to get in there and try to film. And I mean, how wide were the aisles? 5 feet? Because they're in the barn, they were small aisles.
Yeah. And part of that's my fault. I always want to try to get people in. We were blessed to get like a rabid following early, and we had a wait list that was 2 years long, 100 dealers. And so I'd be like, I bet I can put one more table, I can cram it in that corner. So 5-foot aisles probably got down to 4-foot aisles. Thankfully, we're not in the building. I don't know if that was fire code approved or not, but yeah, the barn was overstuffed.
Yeah, Brian's got the video up now. It's a video from 11 months ago. It was like March. This would have been the same time a year ago. And when we were there last time, you can see a little bit on the video, but we couldn't walk through the aisles. So we sat at the front desk, like the check-in desk where Gabby and Stacy were, and we sat there and behind the counter to like make deals, because we couldn't get through the aisles and film. Like you could barely get through the aisles at all walking, let alone Brian being there to kind of film some of it. Going back to your point earlier, though, I think that, I think I've mentioned it in every single Shipshewana video I've ever done. I start them a lot of the same way, and I end them a lot of the same way. This show's in the middle of nowhere, but it is run by good people, right? The man sitting next to me here is one of the best humans I know, and it has some of the best vendors in the country. And that has always been one of the things I've said so much about Shipshewana is there's some amazing human beings that, are in this industry, and there's a lot of them that set up in Shipshewana. And I think that was so important for that. Like you said, good people know good people. For us, it's a lot like, going to Dallas. There's a lot of those people in Shipshewana, a lot of awesome humans that we go with, and every time it's easy. It's easy to make deals with. It to me is one of the things I look at from afar. We obviously worked together on this one, but you've run every single one up to this point, and I look at it and I'm like, this is definitely one of the things that helped it grow so much and expand so much over the years, is that great group of people, a lot of who still set up today and are a huge part of that show. I definitely look at that as like, this was instrumental.
Well, and it's something I think about a lot too. If we're blessed to expand like we think we might, it's so important to keep that core of dealers is as important as me and you, because it's the heart of the show. And it's, I think, the heart of the show that makes people go to Nowhere, Indiana. Yeah. So I think it's super important that we hold on to that and make sure those people feel like, hey, we're a huge part of this. And day one is a phrase we'll probably use to the end of time, because there's a lot of guys that I bet 80% of the people that took me up on the buy one, get one free are still hanging out with me, even though we've had to raise some table prices over the years to keep up with expansions. But they're a great group.
For sure. Looking back on it, or just in general, with like running it, like, what do you think is one of those things that you look at is like, this is probably something most people don't really think about when running a show? I know we've talked about some of this as we prepared for it, but is there anything that kind of stands out to you as like something completely off the wall that you wouldn't ever think about, that you think like, this is tricky, this is sneaky, or whatever it may be with running a show?
Yeah, I'm not sure this is, something totally out there that you wouldn't think of. But I mean, you and I are obsessive compulsive about what are the other show schedules in the area. I mean, if you think about it, if there's 250 table shows, what are you going to do? You're probably going to go to the closest one. So if you can find that niche in the calendar, I'll give a little trade secret away. If you can find the 5th Saturday in a calendar month, so let's say this April, August, whatever, has a 5th Saturday. Well, most monthly shows say they're there the first Saturday. They say they're the 2nd or the 3rd or the 4th. No show plans themselves unless they just do 1 or 2 a year on that 5th Saturday. So that can be a sneaky play where we can grab a slot where no one is. And then other things, watch sports schedules. I mean, if you are going to do a show like Columbus, Ohio, you probably want to know when the Buckeyes are playing at home, especially if you want this guy to show up. But up in Michigan, they're not going to miss Wolverine games. I know you will, but they won't. They won't up there. So just watching, like, I guess I would say be obsessive compulsive. Look at everything. Look at your market. Look at the other shows, and just really make sure you put your show in the best possible situation to win. And if you can happen to be the only show going or the only show in your area, people love cards. They love shows. They'll take a chance on you. So I would just really scour the calendar and think of every little possible thing you can to put yourself in a successful position.
I think that's one of the things that I've learned so much about you in this process of trying to build this, build Shipshewana and some of these other ones. And I think a lot of people listening don't know, right? Is, you're pretty, if you don't really know Brad, you're pretty quiet. You're pretty introverted. I mean, honestly, like on camera, I'm pretty extroverted, but outside of it, I'm a pretty introverted person. I think we're a lot alike in that. But the one thing I will say, and I think this is what makes this, the show special, what makes you special, is being obsessive compulsive is the difference from running a good show to running a great show. Because I think that's the thing so many people don't have any idea is you would be amazed at how much time gets spent on each decision. I think that's the thing that, when we got into this, we're like, hey, we're going to run a show here. We're going to do this. Like, we have dreams and aspirations to run really cool shows, and that'll be probably a lengthier episode at another time. But the amount of time and back and forth and the obsession around decisions is what makes a show what it is.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you owe that to your dealers. They're taking time out of their day. They picked your show. I just feel like I can never be lazy because I have other people's time that I'm trying to value. And I think it's important to provide extreme value to your collectors and your dealers. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're good for each other or not in that capacity because we can really push off a decision because we will really go. I mean, we'll talk about should badges have rounded corners? Should they have edges? Was the lanyard long enough? We've decided they were not at Shipshewana. We need longer lanyards. So we really, but I think what people are going to see over the next 2 years at Shipshewana is that obsession to value, that obsession to quality. I mean, we're just going to be, and we're going to prove it to people. We won't just say it. We're going to prove it to people. But you're going to notice a difference when you come to our shows because there's going to be no corners cut. We might not be where we're at, but we're going to get there.
Yeah, and I think you always have somebody that, it's not perfect, right? Like you can't please everybody. But I think that is one thing, that I hope comes across when we do these shows is like, we really, really think about some of these decisions. Like, that is one thing I've told a lot of our team about is, the QR code on the back.
Yeah.
Our team mentioned that, because a lot of the guys here, it was really you and I on a lot of these decisions. Like, nobody else that works here
was the events team.
Yeah, nobody else here was involved in any of those things. It was you and I, and the QR code on the back of the badges that links to the website that says, hey, these are when the show dates are, and so many of those little decisions to try to improve it. Like, we added the shuttle bus. We were worried about parking. There's 850 parking spots in this place. The previous one, I think, had 161.
Something like that. And grass.
Yeah, and grass. So we went from a spot that had 200 tables, 161 parking spots, to a spot that had 50,000 square feet, what's the exact number of tables? 370?
There were 353 on the floor for dealers, and then we had another 50 for corporate row. So 403 if you count.
403 total tables, 850 parking spots. And just the little things. Brad calls me Wednesday before the show. When was that? Wednesday, Thursday? Yeah. He's like, I'm worried about parking. I don't think we're going to have enough parking. I don't think so. We should get a shuttle bus. And we added a shuttle bus for Friday because trade nights have always been crazy in Shipshewana. You got a 4 to 8 show preview. You've got a trade night afterwards. He's like, I don't think we'll have enough because was it a horse show?
Only in Shipshewana there was a buggy horse show.
Buggy horse show going on at the same time. Yeah. So you had horse and buggies. That's very common in Shipshewana. You had them parked in like the smaller parking lot. So we were concerned that there was going to be not enough parking spots. We got a shuttle bus that went from the major hotel, Farmstead, to the show in case we needed overflow parking. Just the little things like that. We ended up adding it for Saturday as well. There still wasn't enough parking. It was absolutely crazy. But I hope that's the thing that, really comes out of this is we really are trying to make this enjoyable for every single person, dealer, vendor, patron, whoever it is, collector that walks through that door. We hope it's an incredible experience, and I think a lot of that, all of it comes from you, and I think that's something that's shown from Shipshewana from the first one to today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I think we should probably get into it. I think this is where I would like to take this next. Is we had those little details. There's a lot of them that we spent a lot of time on, but it's over. The show happened. First thoughts. How do you think it went?
I think we have a lot of good business problems, meaning, in my opinion, the show is... let me step back from... I always want to be a fixer, so I'll go straight to the things I would have fixed. But let me back up and say this. So thankful for every collector, every dealer that supported us. We kind of went out on a limb on a few things. Like, we went to this tiered pricing system that I won't bore the audience with, that there basically just was like concert style pricing, right? If you're in the back, you pay less than if you're in the front. So we had to develop all that. And it was, I think, well received by the dealers. And to have all those dealers follow us from the barn, where it was just a proven, like, if we do that show in the barn in March, it's going to be successful. Instead, we picked it up, we moved it 1.5 miles down the road, and we did it in a whole new venue. And I literally, it's going to sound sappy, got teary-eyed. I went up on that walk that you can go up on. I looked down at the show and like literally teary-eyed because I was like, this is crazy. Like, this started with 44 buy one get one free tables. There's over 400 tables out there, and then to see all the people at preview night, just as we hoped they would, stay and walk over and get that picture of the trade night. Even though I like to think the problems first, I have to step back, and I hope you do too, and go, that was really special. That was a very, very fun weekend. And I worried that our preview night that we did for the first time, we haven't even mentioned that the barn had an epic trade night established for years.
For sure.
And we changed the format. We added that 4-hour show. And I'll be honest with you, we did that to protect the dealers a little bit. When it was just a trade night and then the show started, it kind of hurt the dealers a little bit in the sense that they didn't get their opportunity, and they really fund the show, the economics of the show. Yep. So the preview night, I thought was a smash hit. I thought, man, if we could just get like 25 to 50% more people in here on show day, like, this would have been a good thing. We moved to a venue, everyone followed us, and we got a good crowd. At 9:50 a.m., we had no parking, except for if you parked on the sides of the building in the grass.
Yeah, illegally.
And that's a good business problem to have. So now for the next show, we can improve the marketing even more, improve the signage even more, maybe round the corners on the badges. But you and I won't stop. We'll figure out overflow parking. We'll make sure everyone can get to the door in 5 minutes. We will keep grinding on this. But I'm so excited to be in a building that we can grow in. And as I said before, we have good business problems. The aisles might be too small. We doubled the aisle size. We had 8-foot aisles. We may need 10-foot aisles, especially in certain sections of the show. So I don't know. I guess I'll bounce it back to you. What was your takeaways?
Yeah. I talked about it in one of our vlogs a little bit, but to put on a show with that many people both setup and in attendance. I mean, Saturday was nonstop from the time it opened to 3 o'clock. Show ends at 4. It was definitely the busiest it had ever been all day. And it was in a bigger venue with, double the aisles. And it didn't look like empty. It looked full the entire time because it was. I mean, to be out of parking at 9:50 a.m., I mean, that's crazy. There's 850 parking spots, right? So, like you said, good problems to have. But I said it earlier, like, that show is built on good people. And you see that, like, they're there, they're supporting, they're promoting on their own.
Yeah,
like,
that's so huge too. Great topic sometime is just the dealers promoting shows that they're going to.
For sure. Like, and I think that was huge for us. But yeah, to be able to run a show in Shipshewana, Indiana, that is working its way up the ranks of, being in the conversation for some of the best card shows in the country. Like, it is, like, that show was packed. So yeah, to be able to run it in a much bigger venue, like you said, that we can grow into. How big is that venue?
92,000 square feet
And what did we rent?
52,000.
50,000. So you have 40,000 additional square feet. And I think that's one of the things that this could be our segue to our next topic is, the wait list to get in and set up in Shipshewana has been long for a long time. The barn did not allow for much expansion. You had so many core dealers from day one. There wasn't an opportunity to put in a lot of new people. Like, it's been the group of people that has built the show. To get new people in was tricky. Like, it's not run 10 times a year. It's run 2, 3 times, 4 times some years. So I think that's one of the things I think about is, expanding. One of the things you and I struggled with building the show was, what is the right number of vendors with show space, right? Because there's 40,000 more square feet. That comes at a cost. You don't just get to pick how much space you want and it's all the same price. Yeah. You have to buy the square footage. So to get more square feet, to allow more vendors to set up, you pay more money for that, so an additional expense. But what we want to do is we want to make sure every vendor that chooses to set up at the show and spend their time, like you said, you're spending your time, your money, to be there in Shipshewana, Indiana. We want to make sure it's as good of a show for as many people as possible. So to expand that, are we going to fill it with more people? Are we going to fill it with more collectors that walk around and want to make more deals? Because if not, there's the same amount of dollars to go around with more people. It might impact other, some vendors' show experience. So I think that is one of the things that we've struggled with. And I think that's, people say, oh, you've got more square footage. Why don't you just expand and let 800 vendors in there? But that doesn't always work that way. And just curious, maybe some of your thoughts behind, that challenge.
Yeah. My friend Neo, Rob, he talks about a show ecosystem quite a bit on his podcast. And he'll talk about how money circulates through a show, and the more dealers you have, the more crowd you need to circulate that money. And for me, I think I had a lot of people come up after the show and say, well, now you can just, this was huge. Now you can just rent the other 40,000 square feet and fill it with dealers. In my mind, you grow slowly and you make sure that core that's been with you, we don't delete the money that comes to the show, and that they can have the days that they're used to having. So I think it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we grow the show as the crowd grows. So I think it's just as important to give people as many reasons as possible to come to the show. So I do think we should add dealers. We do still have some on the wait list, but I think that's a real slow growth. Maybe you add 20 at a time. I never think it's prudent when a show has just a banana show and then adds 100 dealers or adds 200 dealers. I would rather add 20, 50 dealers, and this isn't really even something we've talked about yet because it's so fresh off the show. I think the next step for us, too, is services. Expand the kid scavenger hunt. The kid scavenger hunt is the heart of our show. It's so big now. I think Courtney, who runs it for us, said that we used to do 300 packs in 3 hours. We did 550 in an hour and 10 minutes. I actually went to Ryan and I said, our merch table, I'm giving all the kids' shirts away because I don't want kids coming up to this table who walked around an entire show for an hour getting stamps on their bingo card to come up and not have anything. So you were throwing cards at me. We gave them T-shirts and save the day there. But I want to add just as much service, expand the kid scavenger hunt. The bucket list is, for me, we haven't really talked about this, if we could ever get PSA to come out there and take submissions. So a PSA and SGC, get more services, COMC. So these are companies that we'll be talking to and showing them the drone video that, hey, we just packed 52,000 square feet. Like, we're in the middle of nowhere, but get to Detroit or Chicago and get in the car for 2 hours and come see us, because I promise we'll make it worth your while. So that's what's on my heart right now. Yes, absolutely expand the dealers, but let's provide a bunch of service for the collectors as well.
Yeah, I think that's, those would all be things on my list for sure. The grading thing's always in high demand there. Is, hey, there are people grading cards here. You see big shows like that, and that's one of the first things people ask is, can I come here and get my cards graded? So that's definitely on people's list. I've always said what makes a show special is, attending to kids. It's a huge part of what makes a show go. Kids are a huge part of the future. They are the future. They're a huge part of the card ecosystem now. So the scavenger hunt, Courtney's done an amazing job in building that to what it's become over the years. I mean, it's a big part of that show. I don't think, I don't think a lot of people know how big it is at that show. I think it's something that's going to continue to develop. We're going to continue to put resources and ideas behind it. I mean, Zion cases this time. Clint and his team have been amazing partners for our company for a long time, and we approached them and said, hey, can we get some Zion cases to give away? And they give away I think we got 3 3-rows, 3 2-rows, 4 sling bags. I mean, $800+ in Zion cases to give away. And next time is going to be kids trade nights are a big part of our business. Kids are a huge part of our content. So I can assure you that will be something that continues to grow. But, this is, I think, will be fun because we've talked about this a little bit, but like looking at the show, what would you say were like 3 of the highlights for you that like, these are things that went well, these are things I like to see? Like if you had to pick out a couple highlights from the show from the few days that was.
Yeah. I mean, obviously just the reaction, just from people that have been coming from the show for years. They went to the Farmstead Inn Hotel, shout out to the family. They went over to the barn and followed us over there. And now they saw this venue and they're like, my goodness, like to see the evolution of this show. So that was really fun for me, just the guys that have always done that. I loved the dealer investment. There were some people that went all new setups because they were like, you're going to a 50,000 square foot. We're stepping our game up too. I mean,
I give some serious shout out to TNT on that.
Oh my goodness.
Because their setup, you could see from the front door, it was humongous. It was awesome. I told Brad earlier, I'm like, this is an A+ setup. I don't know if Brian's got pictures of it, but I think TNT did a great job. Brent, our guy Brent had one. Shannon's Cards, yes. Logan, Great Sports Cards had one. Diomi Slabs is there. I mean, Jason goes to a lot of them. They had a huge setup. Andy at Indie Card Exchange, Indiana Royalty was there.
The card father of Indiana.
The card father of Indiana, he was there. They had a huge setup. Just so many people. I mean, I would echo that for sure. I thought it was an A+ show.
And then probably the third thing was just when you reach... I didn't probably think a lot about, okay, we're a 230 table show. And now we're a 350 table show or 400, whatever we're at. The amount, we always got people that traveled, but it was almost like, I always say the show where the Guy Fieri goes to the restaurants and he goes to these hole in the wall places. That's kind of what Shipshewana was. It was like this really good, almost hidden secret. And just the amount of travel that people did to get here, like people from Boston. Had a dealer who's like, hey, do you have any openings? I was like, I have a guy who has a wedding or something and I only have Friday. He goes, I'm coming from Toronto. I'll drive down. So he drove from Toronto.
Yeah, shout out Simon.
Yeah. Just to set up for the day. So, and he was great all weekend. He stayed all weekend and hung out with us. California, all kinds of places. So yeah, it was really, those were the things that stuck out to me. Just how good the room looked, how happy I was that people made the journey with us, and then the travel. Like, my goodness, like that's crazy to me that people came to Shipshewana, Indiana. I hope they still, we're going to give them reason too, but they just felt really blessed by it. How about you?
Yeah, I would echo all of those things. I thought the setup thing was great. Just the presentation from dealers. I think that just adds a whole different level to a card show is when you have national type setups at a card show in Shipshewana, Indiana, it makes it look like a real serious card. I mean, it is. It is a big time show, but to see that there is cool. Like you said, it started in a hotel in Shipshewana, Indiana. I mean, how many people are in the town of Indiana or in Shipshewana? 700, 800? It's not very many. I think we've talked about this.
650 to 750.
It's not very many. So to see those kind of setups in there is fantastic. You know, one of the things I've got to give a lot of credit to, I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but Gabby and Stacy were there, and they've been at all of these, right? They've helped. They ran the first one, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of those things that, like, when from an outsider, because I hadn't run all of them before. This was the first time I had been involved. But having those two there who have run shows with you for so many times, that know it well, that know vendors, that know processes, the systemization of a card show is so important. And again, I think that's the behind the scenes thing of a card show. Brian and I should do a video about this next time. I know we talked about it this time. It didn't work out. We didn't know what to expect. But like, what goes into running a show when you have people that are obviously family, but Gabby and Stacey leading so much of the registration, you know, Reg came, Kinsey came, like people came to help with that process as it grew and we needed more bodies. But something as small as that, like, it's played such a major impact on the show, and just, you know, that dealer experience. You just don't have a lot of dealers that are like, what's going on? Like, why is this? Like, it was easy. It was effortless. And I think that is a thing I look at as like, this is so huge. You can't understate how important it is to have people that have been there since the beginning, know so much about it, know a lot of the people, are friendly, personable. It just it takes a show from like okay to world class, and that's something I know that you and I, you know, prioritize, is making this one of the best card shows, and I think they were huge in that. That would definitely be one of the ones I would say outside of what you had said.
Well, they always say your greatest strength is your greatest downfall. And I think my greatest strength in running a show is I'm very responsive. But we were just talking earlier before we jumped on here that my biggest downfall is I would rather go do it than tell someone how, you know.
Yeah, delegate.
So I run. Like, I'm running. I never stop. If you ever come to the show, I hardly ever sit down. So they're the stable force, right? Like, okay, Brad's out putting out a fire. He just left. Like, there's no one here. So they're huge. And we talked about downloading that institutional knowledge of the show to some CC2 team is huge. And Regina, I think, and Kinsey were big time stars of the show. I got so many compliments about how they greeted people and made them feel welcome. So instantly they fill in with the vibe of the show. I don't know how long they want to keep coming to card shows, but I hope they keep coming to card shows, because we are the events team, and it takes more than you and I by far. And man, a great topic is just hiring good vendors, like good security, good.
The shuttle bus people.
The shuttle bus people. Shuttle bus people are giving me feedback on, like, you know, we could have went to more hotels. And I'm like, oh, I guess that's a really good idea. So, yeah, I mean, card shows are people, right? And so, and I will say within this show, I felt super supported, because it was just me, Gabby, Stacy, to have Kinsey, to have you. If I needed to yell at BK and JD, like, hey, real quick, could you help me carry this? And I tell you, one thing I didn't expect was getting Zion cases out to people on the fly is a challenge. I think we might need a Zion case guy for the next show. So, that's probably a big challenge for us. It's just the staff and how do we do that? It's a business where you don't need a ton of people to plan it. But man, on show day, you just need an army and a family to get it done. For
sure. That's the thing is there's a lot of, like, when you have time, when you know your dates, you know your venue, like, getting those things is the most important. There's so much time and effort. Like, we've looked in Columbus for more times than you could imagine. But once you get the show date and once you get the venue, once you find those two things, then it's planning. Yeah. And then it's some decisions happen very quickly and are instantaneous, and some things take time and feedback. Like, we've asked a lot of people, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Yep. Like, we pulled opinions from people on tiered pricing, on a lot of different things, like a lot of things people don't know. So we got a lot of opinions on that. But the 72 hours before a show and the 24 hours after a show, you know, from a content perspective, showing people what goes on in a show, what goes behind the scenes, what happened, who came out. Like, we're obviously we're really big on content. And then, okay, day of, you got to make sure vendors are taken care of, parking is there, hotels are good. Like, there's so many things that go into it. So much is needed within a 4-day period. That's not as necessarily as needed 361 other days.
Absolutely.
You need so much those 48 hours. And I think we learned that, but I think the one on Memorial Day will be, better served for what we learned this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm already excited for Memorial Day to tell you how much I loved the last 2 days that we spent in Shipshewana. And yeah, I've already I got the parking solution. I'm on that. And yeah, I think here are the tweaks we'll make to get 10-foot aisles in certain sections of the show. So that's like the fun part, I think, though. You always hear people talk about like you should quit doing something when you don't like the process anymore. And I'm still absolutely in love with the process of the everyday. The show is like more nerve-wracking, honestly, because I just want everyone to love it. You know what I mean? The process of getting there, as dorky as it sounds, pricing out venues, pricing out tables, I kind of like it for some weird reason. So we'll obsess, and we'll make sure that anything you saw on Memorial Day, that we've tried to solve it, and then new problems will pop up, and we'll do it again. Yeah,
the process is so much more fun. It's building it, trying to tweak it, trying to make it the best, and then getting the feedback, which is during the show. Yeah. Like, okay, cool, time to do it all over again. And I think that's what's going to be fun.
I've told people before that it's like planning 4 weddings. Like, we work for months for 2 days to be great. Like, you're like, could I just get great weather? It's like your daughter's getting married. Could I just get 72 and sunny? Yeah. And, I was even freaking out that morning because they said no snow.
It snowed.
And we got like maybe a half inch. But still, you're like, what if 5 people don't come?
I woke up and looked outside, and I was like, I wonder what the weather's like. Yeah. And I look outside, and there's snow on the ground. I'm like, oh, no. Yeah. Because what you don't know, and this is a fun one-off story, but it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 Marches ago.
Yeah, March 23. It was like, Brad's like, it's supposed to snow. Brian's probably pulling it up. It's like, it's supposed to snow. And I'm like, oh, no. And it snows in Shipshewana, Indiana.
Like effect.
And we drove up there, and it was a blizzard. It snowed so bad. Brian and I had 80 million detours because there was like accidents and the roads were bad. Because there's not like major snow crews driving around Shipshewana, Indiana. And like, he's got the vlog. I mean, like, you can see it. March 2023. The power went out during trade night. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And that's the tricky part about Shipshewana. This is not necessarily like Orlando, Florida. Like, you got to worry about weather in the March show. And that was one of the things we were like, okay, is this going to be bad? I mean, that's a blizzard in that show. And it was, but I think that's what makes it fun is like those parts of Shipshewana, just like memories like that. It's a lot of fun. But thankfully, the weather was not too bad.
Well, it's funny. I was telling someone at the show on Saturday that we happen to have a common connection. I said, I'm a believer, and I tend not. If I say a prayer about the show, it's always like, I hope everyone's safe. I hope everyone's cards are safe. I hope everyone no trip and falls. I hope we get through this and everyone has a good time. I was literally in the parking lot that night at trade night going, God, if you could just keep the power on, because this is a really big deal. I've never prayed for power before, but that night in the parking lot, I was like, just if we could keep it on, that'd be amazing.
Don't let today be the day.
Let there be light.
What's one thing you want to add to Memorial Day 2025?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it, the thing that's on my mind the most is just format and making sure that, we're starting and ending the preview night at the right times and making those adjustments. But probably outside of making some format tweaks, if we do, I mean, I definitely think we liked the day and a half approach to it. But just that service piece, man, I would love to find just a really good service provider to come out that draws people, that says, oh, like I could really use that service, whether it's grading, whether it's CMC or whoever it is. So that's what's on my mind really heavy right now, because I think I'm excited. I've never had square footage to play with. Yeah. We have room if we want to like do something. And obviously the most profitable thing for us to do is to add tables, and I'm sure we'll add a few, but I think what next levels the show is to getting some more service providers in there.
That would definitely make me feel like I feel the show's amazing, and to see the people at that show and to see what it's become, There's no doubt about it. I'm like, this show is special, and we've built something really cool. You've built something cool that I get to be a part of. Having PSA, BGS, CGC, SGC, having a grading company at that card show one day, that is next level for me.
Yeah.
And I view that as okay, this is officially crazy. So I would definitely like that to be something that we get one day. Expanding the kids thing is probably one thing for me, for sure, is there's so many kids that come to that show. How can we, level up, whether it's a kid zone? I know that's something, Jeff Wilson and his team did at the National. I know that's something we've seen briefly at other shows, but having some area for kids, we'll always believe that to be a big part of the show.
Trade night.
That's
Shipshewana to some people is almost more known for the trade night. So
we've had some epic trade nights in Shipshewana, Indiana.
Absolutely. Trade nights are tricky for shows. I mean, as a collector, you probably don't, well, why would a trade night be tricky? Well, it's really a giveaway by the show. It's saying, hey, collectors, thank you for coming. We're going to give you some opportunity to get on the other side of the table, make your deals. And again, that ecosystem, a lot of money's picked up in trade nights. It's dumped back in the show the next day. So I think I would like to expand. We did 10,000 square feet, and thought...
Brian's got the picture there.
We did.
That is packed. I was in trade night. Like, I'm sitting on my Zion case because the chairs were full.
Yeah, so we did 10,000 square feet, and that's 50 round tables in the middle and 125 8-footers on the edge.
Full. After a 4-hour show day.
Yes.
Before another full day the next day. Shout out to Ludex for providing pizza, by the way. I got a lot of comments on the pizza. A lot of people said thanks for the pizza, so shout out to Ludex for making that happen.
And shout out to the pretzel lady. The soft pretzels were a nice ad. You guys were too busy to
Brian and I didn't get to enjoy the luxuries of the Shipshewana pretzels because they're next level.
And the other thing we talked about was maybe just spacing the trade night out from the dealer show floor even a little bit more. And security's on my mind a lot. As we grow, we owe it to our dealers. And, you can never be 100% because, unfortunately, 99% of people that come to a card show are amazing. 1% it's like the rest of the world. They're not always the greatest. And so we do our best to protect them. So there's just some things I would like to tweak there, I guess. But I think there's a lot of potential. If that's the first one, I think we can take it to some pretty crazy places if we expand it and do some really cool things in that area.
Seeing this show, and we're not going to get into too much of it today. We have a lot of work to do, but knowing what we've learned in Shipshewana and running that, you've run Fort Wayne twice now, 2 times in Fort Wayne.
Yes. Yep.
Fort Wayne twice. That's basically once a year at this point. Has me excited for hopefully putting something on at some point in Columbus one day. Just knowing what we're able to do in Shipshewana to get to a major city, something so close to home for us. We can get more into it when the time comes. But this, seeing trade night in Shipshewana, Indiana, filled with 175 tables at 8, that's probably 9 o'clock at night. That's just has me excited for, future shows.
Well, and I think that's one thing that makes Shipshewana special too, is that if you're in Shipshewana, Indiana for a card show, there's amazing shows in big. I mean, you tell me all the time, Dallas is like best card show not called the National, and there's so many, Burbank, Philly, all these great card shows, Chantilly. But there can be distractions in Philadelphia and Los Angeles. If you're in Shipshewana, Indiana, you're there to deal cards for 24 straight hours. So it's intense, but it's what our collectors love and what we hope to expand on.
All right, now we could obviously keep talking about this for forever. This is something Brad and I spend a lot of time on and just enjoy talking about so much. And like you said earlier, just kind of building it. That's what has made this so fun. But for the sake of time, just a couple things I want to get out in the open. One, official dates for the next one.
Yeah, so we have built the show on, there's always a March show, Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend. So the upcoming schedule, we got the March one knocked off the schedule, but we'll be back on 5/23, 5/24. A little bit of change for us. We're like a Sunday, Monday, or a Monday show. We're going to go Friday, Saturday. I think Ryan and I feel very strongly moving forward will always be a Friday, Saturday show. It makes a lot more sense for a lot of people's schedules. And then we'll be back around Labor Day. The venue actually has an event, so we'll be back around close to Labor Day again. But that's the upcoming schedule for Shipshewana. Is we'll see everyone on Memorial Day weekend and in the fall.
5/23, 5/24 is Friday, Saturday, Memorial Day weekend. What is that, 2 months away, 2.5 months? Basically 90 days until the next one. A lot of time to figure some things out.
Seems like a lot of time. Doesn't
Yeah, it seems like a lot of time. But
be.
when you realize we got to start planning now, especially with some of the other things that we're working on in life, it's gonna happen quick. And then if anybody's interested in learning more about like Shipshewana, the Shipshewana Card Fest, some of the things going on there, couple places. Shipshewana Card Fest is the IG handle.
Yeah, we bought a few different properties. Cardfest Events is like the real simple one. It'll get you to all of our shows. So cardfestevents.com is a great resource. And we're going to, in the next 90 days, we got to really build that out. It's pretty bare bones, but you're going to see some major improvements in that.
And then there's a Facebook group as well.
Yes. Yeah, we have a very passionate Facebook group. They probably are worn out because the posts were flying, but that's great engagement. As you know, as a content guy, cards and content, you couldn't pay for that type of engagement. So love the Facebook group. It's the heart of the show right now. But that Shipshewana Card Fest, -B Sports /Card Collector too. But that's a great resource. It's a passionate bunch though, so be ready.
I'll have Brian and the team make sure that those are linked in the YouTube video, make sure those are linked in all of the podcast details. If you guys are looking for any of those links, for anything around Shipshewana Card Fest, it'll be down there. Last question. I asked this for anyone on the show. This will be a little different for you, maybe less of a collector per se, but more of like a show guy. You've built one of the best card shows in the country, and it started in a small hotel room. You were starting over today. Knowing what you know now, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Well, what I would tell, two things. One, I would say if you're thinking about doing it, do it. I know there was a card show boom, right? But if it's your dream, that's your dream, and go after it. You never know. I didn't think we would get to this point where I would quit a 20-year insurance career and work with one of my best friends and promote card shards full time. Who gets to do that? So I feel very blessed by that. But the other thing I would say is, what's that saying they say? Don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't.
Don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from.
And the thing that, with all the extra exposure that you bring to the show, which is a wonderful thing, if you get 1,000 compliments or 1,000 pieces of advice, I was really sensitive to the couple. There'll probably be something in these comments, right? Hey, they're really talking about their show. But just take feedback, but take feedback from people that have a genuine interest in watching the show grow and not a genuine interest in their best interest, right? Yep. There's so many people, the person that pops up in my head is Brad Hollister. He gives such great feedback, and it's feedback that hey, the show would be better. What you'll get as a card promoter is a lot of dealers will give you advice based on what makes their day better, and what's good for one person often isn't good for the show. So I would just say you're the only one that gets all the feedback. Take the feedback, use it to improve the show, but don't get overly mired in the muck of people's best interests and things like that, because the true core dealers that will be with you a long time want the show to grow, not just their interest to grow. Yep. And partner up and take that advice. It's
great advice. I would I couldn't argue with that one bit. I think it's great advice for I obviously love that quote. So many people, especially in the content space, Brian and I've been able to build something really cool, and people love to give you all sorts of advice. But again, I think that's crucial, especially with what Shipshewana is, that core group. Mm-hmm. There's so many people that have been willing to share advice. So many people we've leaned on, recently, you for a long time and me more recently. And I think that's, it's been instrumental in building it to what it's become and what it will continue to grow into. Appreciate you coming on.
Loved it.
Where can people find you specifically online? I think there's one place. I think you're really just one place.
Yeah.
Outside of running the Shipshewana groups.
Yeah, so that we do per what it was about a year ago at the Midwest Monster. You came up to me and go, for crying out loud, get a Shipshewana Card Fest Instagram dedicated to the Shipshewana Card Fest, because it was like, here's my Indianapolis Colts cards, and here's pictures of the show, and you're like, brother, like, come on, get it Instagram. So yeah, the Shipshewana Card Fest Instagram, thanks to this guy's growing all of a sudden here, and then the one that I've had since 2014 is at B_sports. It'll be anything from shows to Anthony Richardson bad investments to just updates on everything. So that's the main home there where you see my life a little bit more.
So check Brad out if you guys have not already. And if you guys are new here, make sure you guys leave a like, subscribe, comment, do anything like that to help this podcast. If you guys enjoy these interviews, we've got some cool guests like Brad planned very, very soon. So as always, let us know in the comments who you guys want to see on the next episode. But for now, that is all I got. All right, not really much to say here as we wrap up this one after that incredible interview with my guy, Brad at B Sports. Shout out to Brad for coming on. A-plus guy, if you guys have not already, check him out. And then check out the Shipshewana Card Fest page on Facebook and on IG. Continuing to grow the content for that card show. Next one is going to be in May, Memorial Day weekend, the 23rd, 24th. We've got some big things planned for that. So excited to share more about those things as they come up. Last thing here as we get into some of the product dropping this week. I feel like some of these we've actually already talked about on this segment here. Just shows you how product can be delayed and pushed around, and that is not new. So understand that we might be talking about these and you guys might be like, man, these got pushed again. Totally possible. Prism Basketball Fast Break, Skybox EX 2000 Hockey, Vivid Baseball, Court Kings Basketball, and La Liga Soccer. It would be odd to see 2 basketball products released in a week. Doesn't normally happen, can happen, but Prism Basketball Fast Break, just a version of Prism Hobby, which is already out. So that wouldn't be crazy to see it with Court Kings, but you're definitely starting to see a lot more basketball product as we get more into the season, more of that class, Brawny, Connect, some of those guys. So expect to see more basketball stuff here soon. Getting some Panini Soccer coming out with La Liga. Nothing that I'm dying for there. And I'm more of a football type guy, so hopefully we see some more football here soon. Ideally some 24 product. I think I saw the preview recently for like Optic and Select and some of those. So some things coming down the pipeline, but nothing at the moment. That is it. Longer episode. If you made it this far, you're the real MVP. We've got some cool guests coming soon. Drop those comments on YouTube. Follow us on IG, Apple, Spotify. Follow us on there. But for now, that is all I got. Peace, guys.